Before a man loses his future, he loses the room inside his own mind where command is supposed to live. That is the first defeat, not the visible one, not the lost opportunity, the woman who pulled away, the money that disappeared, the respect that faded, or the position he failed to reach. Those are only the ruins people can see. The real collapse happens earlier, in silence, when a man allows something outside him to enter his attention, touch his pride, stir his hunger, disturb his fear, and begin issuing orders. Machiavelli would not have called that emotion. He would have called it occupation. Because the world does not need to defeat a distracted man. It only needs to keep him busy. Give him enough noise, enough pleasure, enough insult, enough urgency, enough validation, enough uncertainty, and he will abandon his own throne without ever realizing there was a coup. This is why the focused man is dangerous. Not because he works harder for one afternoon, not because he looks intense in public, not because he posts discipline, quotes power, or speaks like he has conquered himself. He is dangerous because he has taken back the command room. His attention is no longer public property. His emotions are no longer open doors. His desire is no longer a leash. His fear is no longer a steering wheel. And his future is no longer negotiated by every temporary feeling that enters his body. Most men think focus means concentration. They think it means blocking distractions, making a schedule, waking up earlier, or forcing themselves through another productive day. Those things matter, but they are only surface tools. The deeper truth is colder. Focus is not the ability to stare at a task. Focus is the refusal to be ruled by anything that has not earned authority over you. That is the Machiavellian definition. Power begins when access ends. A man who can be interrupted by anything is not focused. A man who can be provoked by anyone is not powerful. A man who can be seduced away from his mission by comfort, attention, anger, loneliness, or lust is not free. He may have options, he may have confidence, he may even have ambition, but if the world can still move him without permission, then the world still owns part of him. This is where the third story begins. Not with motivation, with ownership. Who owns your attention when you wake up? Who owns your mood after one message? Who owns your discipline when no one is watching? Who owns your hunger when pleasure calls? Who owns your direction when someone doubts you? Who owns your silence when you feel the need to explain? These questions are not soft, they are strategic. A prince who cannot guard his gates does not need enemies outside the wall. He has already invited defeat inside. A man who cannot guard his mental space does not need a stronger opponent. He will sabotage himself with weaker impulses. This is why Machiavelli's rules for men who want power begin inside the skull. Before strategy, there must be command. Before silence, there must be restraint. Before victory, there must be ownership. The average man loses because his mind is too available. A notification can redirect him. A comment can disturb him. A woman's distance can destabilize him. A friend's joke can shrink his ambition. A craving can break his promise. A hard day can erase his standards. Then he calls himself unlucky, overwhelmed, or misunderstood, when the real issue is simpler and harder to accept. He is too easy to move. That line should hit harder than any insult, because most men know exactly where they are still movable. They know the person who can make them react. They know the habit that gets them at night. They know the emotion that makes them talk too much. They know the weakness they keep defending as personality. They know the comfort they return to when the pressure rises. They know, and knowing is not enough. The general knows and acts. The weak man knows and negotiates. A general does not wake up and ask, "What do I feel like doing?" He asks, "What must be protected today?" He does not ask, "Who understands me?" He asks, "Who deserves access?" He does not ask, "How do I remove discomfort?" He asks, "What does discomfort reveal about my defenses?" That is the first fracture. Focus is not about becoming busier. It is about becoming less penetrable, less available to noise, less available to emotional bait, less available to weak company, less available to cheap pleasure, less available to the version of yourself that wants the crown without the command. A man who wants power must become harder to enter, not closed to life, but closed to invasion. He can listen without being absorbed, feel without being ruled, desire without surrendering, lose without collapsing, wait without panicking, build without announcing, walk away without needing applause for the distance. This is not coldness. Coldness is often fear pretending to be strength. This is governance. The governed man still feels everything. He simply does not let everything become law, and that is what makes him unshakably focused. The world keeps knocking. He stops opening every door. This is why the first 30 seconds of a man's day matter more than he thinks. They reveal whether he wakes as a ruler or as a servant. If his first movement is toward noise, he has already allowed the world to set the first command. If his first thought is fear, comparison, lust, or resentment, he begins the day beneath forces he did not choose. The focused man treats the morning like a border. Nothing crosses without inspection, and the same law continues through the day. A meeting, a message, a temptation, a memory, a moment of boredom. Each one asks for entrance. Each one asks to become more important than the mission. Most men do not fall at once. They are slowly accessed. That is where the war stays hidden. A man's focus is not proven when life is quiet. It is proven when something touches the part of him that still wants to react. Calm is easy to fake. Discipline is easy to describe. Power is easy to perform when nobody is testing the places where you are still soft. But the moment someone disrespects you, ignores you, questions you, tempts you, delays you, or makes you feel small, the real owner of your mind steps forward. That is why every trigger is a test. Not a test of whether you feel something, you will feel something. A test of whether the feeling becomes your commander. Most men fail here because they confuse the first emotion with the final truth. They feel anger and believe anger must speak. They feel desire and believe desire must be served. They feel fear and believe fear is wisdom. They feel jealousy and believe jealousy is evidence. They feel loneliness and believe loneliness means they should return to whatever once weakened them. This is how the mind gets ruled, not by a single dramatic defeat, but by thousands of small internal surrenders that become normal. Someone insults him, and he explains. Someone doubts him, and he performs. Someone withholds attention, and he chases. Someone laughs at his ambition, and he lowers his voice. Something becomes uncomfortable, and he escapes. Something requires patience, and he looks for relief. He tells himself these are choices, but often they are only reactions with better excuses. Machiavelli would watch the reaction, not the words. Words are cheap. Reaction reveals structure. A man may say he is disciplined, but his reaction shows whether pride governs him. He may say he has moved on, but his reaction shows whether the past still holds keys. He may say he is focused, but his reaction shows whether pleasure can still buy him. He may say he wants power, but his reaction shows whether approval still sits on the throne. This is why the man who can trigger you can steer you. That sentence will make some men defensive because it removes the romance from anger. Many men call their reaction honesty. They say, that is just who I am. But often, who I am is only the name they give to the impulse they have not mastered. They call it real because discipline would make them face how easily they are moved. The focused man does not deny emotion. He interrogates it. Anger appears, and he asks, what did this touch? Fear appears, and he asks, what am I protecting? Desire appears, and he asks, what will this cost? Shame appears, and he asks, what image am I desperate to defend? Loneliness appears, and he asks, what weak door am I tempted to reopen? That pause changes everything. Inside that pause, a man stops being a puppet and becomes a strategist. He does not need to win every argument. He needs to understand what the argument wants from him. He does not need to answer every insult. He needs to know whether the insult is bait. He does not need to chase every person who creates uncertainty. He needs to understand why uncertainty feels like a threat to his identity. This is where focus becomes psychological. A man is not distracted only by screens. He is distracted by unresolved wounds, fragile pride, ungoverned desire, hunger for validation, fear of being unseen, and the old need to prove that he is not weak. The screen is only one gate. The ego has many. A woman's silence can become a gate. A friend's doubt can become a gate. A competitor's success can become a gate. A father's old criticism can become a gate. A memory can become a gate. A fantasy can become a gate. If it can enter your mental space and change your direction without permission, it is a gate. The general studies gates. He does not wait until the enemy is inside. This is why reactive men are predictable. They think they are expressing themselves, but they are educating every sharp mind around them. They teach others what tone makes them angry, what silence makes them anxious. What praise makes them soft? What criticism makes them over-explain? What temptation makes them careless? What rejection makes them desperate? And there are always people watching. Not always enemies. Sometimes friends. Sometimes women. Sometimes competitors. Sometimes colleagues. Sometimes people who love you but still learn your handles. Human nature observes leverage even when it pretends not to. People may not consciously decide to control you, but if they discover what moves you, they will often use it when pressure rises. This is not cynicism, it is pattern recognition. The man who wants power stops donating patterns. He becomes less obvious. He feels anger, but does not immediately speak from it. He feels desire, but does not instantly follow it. He feels insecurity, but does not confess it to people who have not earned that intimacy. He feels pressure, but slows down instead of rushing to relieve it. Slowness becomes a weapon. Silence becomes a shield. Observation becomes dominance. This does not mean he becomes passive. A passive man avoids conflict because he fears it. A focused man delays response because he is shaping it. He can act decisively, but the action comes from command, not reflex. He can speak directly, but the words come from strategy, not leakage. He can walk away, but the walk is chosen, not triggered. That is why he becomes difficult to control. People can still dislike him. They can still misunderstand him. They can still test him, but they cannot easily purchase his reaction. They cannot pull his strings and watch him dance. They cannot turn his pride against his mission. They cannot make his hunger outrank his standards. This is where the video must become uncomfortable. If you are still easily triggered, the problem is not that people know how to push buttons. The problem is that the buttons are still installed. A man who wants power must remove the buttons, not just blame the fingers that press them. That is the second rule. Do not become a man with better reactions. Become a man with fewer handles. Once a man becomes harder to trigger, the next threat is not the enemy outside him. It is the leak inside him. Most men leak power before they lose power. They leak it through their mouths, their appetites, their need to be seen, their need to be reassured, and their hunger to receive the reward before the work is complete. This is where silence becomes more than a personality trait. Silence becomes strategic armor. The unfocused man talks too early because he wants to feel real before he has become real. He announces the goal. He explains the plan. He tells people he is changing. He posts the progress. He reveals the process. He seeks the nod, the praise, the reaction, the small emotional payment that tells him others can see the person he wants to become. But the payment is dangerous because once the mind receives social reward, hunger can soften. A man can begin to feel like the new identity is already his because other people have reacted to the announcement. He spoke like a winner before he moved like one. He enjoyed the reflection before building the substance. He borrowed the feeling of transformation from an audience instead of earning it through private repetition. That is why public progress can become private laziness. This is one of the most dangerous traps for modern men. They want witnesses too early. They want the crowd before the roots. They want to be perceived as serious before seriousness has survived boredom, loneliness, pressure, and repetition. But a thing exposed too soon is easy to poison. A plan spoken too soon is easy to weaken. A man explained too soon becomes easy to read. Machiavelli understood that information is currency, and weak men spend it like they are rich. They tell people what hurts them, what they want, what they fear, where they are going, who they are becoming, what they cannot stand, what they still need. Then they wonder why certain people know exactly where to press when they want influence. The focused man learns a colder rule. Not everyone deserves a map. Your pain is a map. Your desire is a map. Your plan is a map. Your insecurity is a map. Your next move is a map. Your need for validation is a map. If you hand maps to people who lack discipline, loyalty, or character, do not be shocked when your road becomes crowded with resistance. This does not mean you never speak. It means speech must have a purpose. A general does not brief every soldier on every secret. He does not announce his route to the enemy. He does not reveal supply lines because silence feels uncomfortable. He understands that concealed movement is harder to stop. The man who can build without being watched becomes a variable others cannot easily control. That is why building in the dark is so powerful. Not as an aesthetic, as protection. When people cannot see your trajectory, They cannot predict your destination. When they cannot predict your destination, they cannot position themselves to block it. When they do not know what is forming, they cannot easily mock it, weaken it, question it, envy it, or pull you back into the old role before the new one has enough weight. The seed disappears before it rises. A man must learn the same law, but silence alone is not enough. Many men are quiet because they are afraid, not because they are disciplined. They hide because they fear judgment, not because they are protecting construction. That kind of silence is not power, it is avoidance wearing a darker coat. The difference is hunger. The focused man does not disappear to escape the world. He disappears to build something the world cannot ignore. His silence has direction. His absence has work inside it. His privacy has a schedule. His restraint has a mission. This is where hunger must be governed. Every man has hunger. Hunger for sex, hunger for money, hunger for status, hunger for revenge, hunger to be respected, hunger to be desired, hunger to prove that everyone who doubted him was wrong. Hunger is not weakness. A man without hunger has no fire. But hunger without hierarchy is self-destruction. The mission must sit above appetite. Standards must sit above pleasure. Timing must sit above impulse. Future must sit above the feeling of the hour. If that internal hierarchy does not exist, hunger becomes king. And when hunger becomes king, a man will sell pieces of his future for moments of relief. He will chase the wrong woman because loneliness speaks louder than standards. He will flex money he should have kept because insecurity speaks louder than strategy. He will answer disrespect too quickly because pride speaks louder than position. He will return to old habits because comfort speaks louder than command. He will betray his own plan because the body demanded something the mind had not learned to govern. This is not ambition. It is appetite with better branding. Ambition can wait. Appetite demands. Ambition builds. Appetite consumes. Ambition can suffer for a future result. Appetite wants payment now. Ambition is directed hunger. Appetite is hunger without a throne. The focused man does not kill hunger. He assigns it. Rejection becomes work. Anger becomes training. Desire becomes restraint. Humiliation becomes precision. Loneliness becomes solitude. Fear becomes preparation. The energy does not disappear. It is given a job. That is why he becomes dangerous in the dark. While other men are performing, he is building. While they are explaining, he is refining. While they are chasing approval, he is reducing access. While they are leaking plans, he is protecting them. While they are obeying hunger, he is weaponizing it. People may call him distant. Let them. People may say he changed. Good. Sometimes you changed only means you stopped being available for the version of you I knew how to control. That line will offend people because it touches the moral costume people place over comfort. They will say, loyalty means staying accessible. They will say, openness means sharing everything. They will say silence is cold. But if openness costs you command, it is not openness. It is exposure. The third rule is simple. Speak less than your ego wants. Build more than your audience sees. And never let hunger sit on the throne. A man can guard his attention, control his reaction, protect his silence, and discipline his hunger, yet still remain trapped under an invisible ceiling. His circle. Not every chain feels like a chain. Some chains feel like belonging. Some feel like loyalty. Some feel like history. Some feel like comfort. Some feel like the people who knew you before you became serious, and therefore believe they have the right to keep defining you by the version they remember. This is one of the hardest truths for men who want power. The people around you do not only influence your decisions, they shape your perception of what is normal, realistic, embarrassing, admirable, possible, and worth pursuing. Stay long enough in a room with low standards, and high standards begin to feel dramatic. Stay long enough around men who laugh at discipline, and discipline begins to feel lonely. Stay long enough near people who survive on excuses, and your ambition begins to look like betrayal. Your circle trains your ceiling. This does not mean everyone close to you is malicious. That would be too easy. The deeper truth is more uncomfortable. Many people do not want to destroy you. They only want you small enough to understand. When you are distracted, they can relate to you. When you waste time, you do not challenge them. When you make excuses, their excuses feel safe. When you lower your goals, their ceiling remains unquestioned. But when you become focused, you become a mirror. Your discipline reflects their avoidance. Your silence reflects their noise. Your standards reflect their compromises. Your direction reflects their drift. And people often dislike mirrors that do not flatter them. So they pull. Not always with cruelty, sometimes with concern, sometimes with jokes, sometimes with nostalgia, sometimes by reminding you who you used to be, sometimes by calling your seriousness arrogance, sometimes by calling your separation disloyalty, sometimes by saying, be realistic, when what they mean is, do not rise beyond the level that makes me comfortable. This is where a man must become calm enough to see hidden motives without becoming bitter. Bitterness is another leash. A focused man does not need to hate people to limit their access. He can love without obeying, respect without returning, remember without remaining, be grateful for the past without letting the past govern the future. That distinction is power, but it has a cost. Loneliness. Every serious man enters a season where the old room no longer fits and the new room has not yet opened. This is the dangerous middle. The man is no longer comfortable with weakness, but not yet surrounded by strength. He no longer wants the old conversations, but silence still feels heavy. He no longer belongs where he was, but he has not yet arrived where he is going. Many men turn back here, not because the mission failed, because the distance felt expensive. They buy belonging with potential. They make themselves smaller to be recognized. They return to the room where the old version of them is welcomed, even if that room quietly kills the future version. Then they call it loyalty, balance, or humility. But sometimes it is fear of separation. Machiavelli would have seen the strategic failure. A prince cannot build a stronger state while letting weak counsel govern his ear. A man cannot build a stronger life while letting weak environments govern his standards. The issue is not whether he cares about people. The issue is whether those people have earned authority over his direction. Authority must be earned. Access must be earned. Influence must be earned. Love alone does not qualify someone to shape the mission. This is where pain enters the story, because separation hurts. Outgrowing people hurts. Being misunderstood hurts. Losing approval hurts. Watching old bonds become tight around your future hurts. And if a man has not learned to use pain, pain will make him negotiate backward. Pain is where many men lose focus. One betrayal makes them suspicious forever. One rejection makes them desperate. One failure makes them timid. One humiliation makes them perform. One lonely season makes them run back to a life they had outgrown. The event ends, but the wound keeps governing decisions from the shadows. The unshakable man refuses to let pain become king. He studies it. He asks, what did this reveal? He asks, where was I too available? He asks, what did I depend on that I should have commanded? He asks, what standard must now become non-negotiable? He does not romanticize suffering, but he does not waste it either. Pain becomes material, betrayal becomes selectivity, rejection becomes self-possession, failure becomes information, humiliation becomes precision, loneliness becomes proof that he can move without witnesses. This is how patience becomes a weapon. The modern world trains men to panic when results are not immediate. Fast money, fast respect, fast bodies, fast attention, fast status, fast revenge, fast proof. Everything is designed to make patience feel like failure, but speed is not progress. Movement is not direction, and a man sprinting in the wrong direction only arrives faster at consequences. The long game is where focused men separate from emotional men. Emotional men need proof quickly. They need applause quickly. They need the woman to respond, the money to show, the body to change, the world to confirm that the work is working. When confirmation delays, they doubt the mission. But roots are invisible before the tree is undeniable. Skill is invisible before mastery speaks. Discipline is invisible before results expose it. The man who plays the long game keeps working while the reward is silent. He understands that silence from the world is not evidence that nothing is happening. Often, it is the season where everything important is forming beneath the surface. This is why patient men win, not because they are always smarter, because impatient men remove themselves from the battlefield. That is the fourth rule. Choose the circle like a general. Use pain like material. Play longer than weakness can endure. Everything returns to one final truth. A man does not become powerful because he controls the world. He becomes powerful because the world can no longer easily control him. That is what unshakably focused really means. Not a perfect schedule, not constant motivation, not emotional numbness, not pretending temptation no longer exists, not acting like nothing hurts. The focused man is still human. He still feels desire, anger, uncertainty, loneliness, pressure, pride, fear, and pain. But those forces no longer sit on the throne. They appear. He reads them. He governs them. Then he chooses. This is what separates command from performance. Performance needs an audience. Command exists in private. Performance wants to be recognized as strong. Command is willing to be misunderstood, while strength is forming. Performance says, "Look how disciplined I am." Command says nothing and repeats the work. Performance wants power to look impressive. Command wants power to function when the room is empty. Machiavelli's rules are not for the man who wants to seem powerful. They are for the man willing to become difficult to possess, difficult for distraction to possess, difficult for praise to soften, difficult for insult to provoke, difficult for lust to purchase, difficult for fear to stop, difficult for pain to define, difficult for weak company to reclaim, difficult for urgency to rush, difficult for the old self to negotiate with. That is the final image of the general, not a loud man, not a cruel man, not a man performing darkness because he has confused mystery with depth. A real general is not obsessed with being seen as dangerous. He is obsessed with not being careless. He guards the gates. He studies the terrain. He chooses his counsel. He conceals his movement. He protects supply lines. He waits for timing. He moves when movement matters. Your life requires the same discipline. Your attention is the terrain. Your habits are the supply lines. Your circle is the army. Your silence is the shield. Your hunger is the fire. Your patience is the campaign. Your mind is the command center. Lose the command center, and every external victory becomes temporary. You can win money and still be ruled by appetite. You can gain status and still be ruled by insecurity. You can get attention and still be ruled by the need for more. You can build a body and still be ruled by fear. You can be admired and still be owned by people who know how to threaten that admiration. That is why power without self-command is unstable. It only makes the weakness louder. The money exposes it. The status exposes it. The relationship exposes it. The pressure exposes it. The success exposes it. The audience exposes it. Whatever was ungoverned inside the man eventually appears outside him as consequence. So the work is not to chase power first. The work is to become unownable. A man becomes unownable when he stops selling pieces of himself for relief. He stops selling attention to noise. He stops selling dignity to approval. He stops selling standards to loneliness. He stops selling silence to ego. He stops selling patience to urgency. He stops selling the future to appetite. He becomes less available, not less alive, less available to the wrong rulers. This is where many people misunderstand the focused man. They think his distance means arrogance. They think his silence means coldness. They think his restraint means repression. They think his patience means passivity. But they are reading the outside of a structure they have never built inside themselves. A man under command often looks calm to people addicted to chaos. He looks distant to people addicted to access. He looks intense to people addicted to comfort. He looks slow to people addicted to speed. He looks cold to people addicted to emotional leakage. But he is not becoming less human. He is becoming less available for invasion. That is the payoff. Focus is not doing more. Focus is letting less control you. When nothing can buy your attention cheaply, you become dangerous. When nothing can force your reaction easily, you become difficult to read. When hunger obeys the mission, you become harder to corrupt. When silence protects your process, you become harder to stop. When your circle is chosen with precision, you become harder to shrink. When pain serves the future, you become harder to break. When patience outlasts your need for proof, you become harder to defeat. This is not a motivational idea. It is a structure of power. The world can still hit you. It can still test you. It can still disappoint you. It can still misunderstand you. It can still take things from you. But it loses the most important advantage when it can no longer decide what happens inside you. That is when a man becomes truly focused. Not because life became quiet, because command became louder than everything trying to interrupt it. And at that point, he no longer needs to convince people that he has changed. The evidence is in what no longer works on him. The bait does not pull him. The old room does not shrink him. The easy pleasure does not purchase him. The insult does not recruit him. The silence does not scare him. His life may still contain problems, but the problems no longer receive the crown. That is the quiet terror of real power. And if this story helped you see focus differently, don't just leave with the lesson. Subscribe to Money Logic, because every week we break down the money decisions that look normal on the surface, but quietly shape your wealth for years. Like the video if you want more real focus psychology, and subscribe now so you don't miss the next breakdown. Disclaimer: this content is for entertainment and educational, informational purposes only, and is not financial, medical, or psychological advice. The man they cannot move is the man they cannot own.